It all started with a walk. Claire and I were strolling through the park on a chilly Sunday afternoon. The leaves were brilliant shades of red and gold, crunching under our boots as we talked about nothing in particular. It was the kind of moment I'd have usually cherished, just the two of us, away from the noise of work and responsibilities. But then I noticed the bracelet. It dangled from her wrist, a slim silver chain with tiny charms, a star, a moon, and a heart. It wasn't the kind of jewelry Claire typically wore. She leaned toward understated elegance, favoring simple gold pieces or the pearl earrings I'd bought her for our third anniversary. "That's new," I said, nodding toward her wrist. She glanced at it, and for a split second, something flashed across her face. I couldn't quite place it. Nervousness, maybe? Then she smiled. "Oh, this? Harper gave it to me. Sweet, isn't it?" Harper, her younger sister, was always gifting Claire things. A scarf here, a cookbook there. It was believable. Yet something about her tone didn't sit right with me. "When did she give it to you?" I asked. Claire hesitated, just for a moment. If I hadn't been paying attention, I might have missed it. "Last month, when I visited her in Denver," she said lightly. "You remember that weekend?" I nodded, though I was already turning the memory over in my mind. That weekend had struck me as odd even then. She'd left in a rush, barely saying goodbye, and when I'd asked her about the trip afterward, her answers were vague. "Oh, wine, shopping, girl talk," she'd said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Harper has good taste," I said, letting it go for now. But the truth is, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. Claire was acting too casual, too rehearsed. It wasn't like her to fumble over simple details or to keep things from me. At that moment, I couldn't have known what lay ahead. But that bracelet? It was the first crack in the facade, the first hint that the life I thought I knew was a lie. The bracelet lingered in the back of my mind for days. I tried to brush it off as paranoia. After all, Claire and I had been together for 6 years. We were partners. She deserved the benefit of the doubt. Still, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. That unease gnawed at me like a splinter beneath the skin, impossible to ignore. The breaking point came when I was scrolling through social media one night. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just killing time. Harper's profile popped up in my feed. She'd posted a photo from a few days ago, one of her usual over-the-top brunch pics. I almost kept scrolling, but then something caught my eye. Harper was wearing the bracelet. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. It was unmistakable, the same silver chain, the same charms. The caption read, "Best sister ever. Love this gift from Claire." I frowned. Claire had said the bracelet was a gift from Harper, not the other way around. So why was Harper claiming Claire gave it to her? The questions piled up, my mind racing. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Claire had bought matching bracelets for both of them. But why lie about it? Curiosity turned to suspicion, and suspicion turned into action. I clicked through Harper's profile, scrolling further back through her posts. That's when I found it, a photo from the Denver trip. It was a group shot taken at a restaurant. Harper, Claire, and a man I didn't recognize. They were sitting close, drinks in hand, laughing like they were having the time of their lives. The man was tall, with sharp features and an air of confidence. Something about the way Claire leaned toward him, just slightly, but enough to notice, made my stomach turn. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Claire had said the trip was just her and Harper, no one else. So who the hell was this guy? The caption offered no answers. "Great night out in Denver." I clicked on the man's profile tag, my hands shaking. His name was Andrew Miller. His page was public, littered with posts about tech projects and industry awards. He was a programmer, apparently successful, and had a knack for showing off his achievements. And that's when I saw it. A photo buried in his feed, posted 3 months ago, around the same time as Claire's Denver trip. It was taken in what looked like a hotel suite. Andrew was sitting on the edge of a bed, wearing a smug grin and holding an expensive cigar. On either side of him sat Claire and Harper. They were all in matching white robes, their faces lit with the kind of carefree happiness I hadn't seen on Claire in years. The caption hit me like a freight train. "How to have a great rest with the girls after the next project closing." I felt sick. My mind screamed that it had to be a mistake, a cruel coincidence. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, the image spoke louder than my denial. Not only had Claire lied about the Denver trip, but she and her sister had spent it partying with this guy. And then it clicked, the timeline. 3 months ago, she'd come back from Denver acting distant, distracted. She'd barely touched me for weeks. I chalked it up to stress, but now it made sense. The photo, the bracelet, the lies. It all pointed to one thing. Claire had betrayed me. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. My chest felt like it was caving in, every breath sharp and shallow. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth was staring me in the face. The image burned into my mind, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't unsee it. Claire and Harper, laughing in their robes, sitting so close to Andrew. His stupid cigar, his smug grin. The whole thing screamed arrogance and indulgence, like they were reveling in something they thought I'd never find out. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went deeper. I pulled up Andrew's profile again. His posts were mostly about his work, tech conferences, and high-end vacations. The guy clearly loved to flaunt his success. But as I scrolled further back, patterns started to emerge. He had a habit of posting celebratory photos after finishing big projects, luxury dinners, expensive cigars, weekend getaways. And then there was the caption on that photo: how to have a great rest with the girls after the next project closing. Who the hell calls someone the girls, unless it's something personal? And why would Claire be in robes with a man she supposedly didn't know? I clicked on his other photos from that time frame, looking for anything else that might tie him to Claire. There it was again. Another picture, posted a few days after the robe photo, showing a group of people on a yacht. Claire wasn't in this one, but Harper was, standing off to the side with a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Celebrating the hard work with an incredible team. Hashtag work hard, play hard." I recognized the dress Harper was wearing. It was the same one she'd been wearing in a picture Claire had shown me when she got back from Denver. "Look at Harper's new dress," she'd said casually at the time. I hadn't thought twice about it. The connections were piling up, each one tightening the knot of dread in my chest. Then I remembered Claire had taken a vacation to Phuket earlier that year with Harper. She'd gone on about how they needed some sister time to recharge. I scrolled further back on Andrew's profile, and my stomach dropped. He'd posted photos from Phuket around the same time. Beach sunsets, cocktails, and a photo of a villa that looked eerily similar to the one Claire had shown me in her own pictures. I sat back, staring at the screen. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. It wasn't just Denver. This had been going on for months. The realization hit me like a gut punch. Claire hadn't just betrayed me. She dragged Harper into it too. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Harper and I had always gotten along. She was the fun, slightly wild little sister. Sure, but she'd never been malicious. The idea that they'd lied to me together, that they'd shared this secret, made me feel like I was drowning. I needed clarity, answers. And for the first time, I realized I couldn't get them from Claire. She was too good at spinning lies, deflecting, making me feel crazy for asking questions. I decided to call a lawyer. The decision to call a lawyer wasn't easy. For 6 years, Claire and I had built a life together, and the thought of tearing it apart felt like admitting defeat. But after everything I'd uncovered, I knew I couldn't handle this alone. The next morning, I searched for someone discreet but experienced. That's how I found Vanessa Turner, a divorce lawyer who came highly recommended. Her online reviews were filled with phrases like "a bulldog in the courtroom" and "doesn't leave loose ends." Exactly what I needed. When I walked into her office, she greeted me with a firm handshake and a no-nonsense attitude. Her desk was immaculate, except for a single legal pad and pen. "Liam, right?" she said, gesturing for me to sit. "Tell me everything." And I did. I laid it all out. The bracelet, the photos, the lies. Her expression stayed neutral, her pen gliding across the page as she took notes. When I finished, Vanessa leaned back in her chair and looked at me, her sharp eyes assessing. "You've got a pretty strong case for infidelity," she said. "But we'll need more evidence if we want this to go in your favor, especially if she tries to deny it or spin the narrative." "More evidence?" I asked. Vanessa nodded. The photos are damning, yes, but Claire could argue they're innocent. People like her often rely on plausible deniability. We need to shut that down before she even gets the chance. She explained how her investigator could dig deeper into Andrew's background, tracing any connections between him and Claire. Financial records, travel itineraries, text messages, anything that painted a clear picture. I'll need access to your shared accounts and phone records, Vanessa said. Do you think she'd notice if you looked through her devices? I hesitated. Claire wasn't the type to leave her phone lying around, and her laptop was always password protected. But I remembered that she sometimes used our shared tablet for emails and browsing. I can try, I said. Vanessa nodded. Good. The more we know, the better prepared we'll be when it comes time to confront her. That word, confront, sent a chill down my spine. I wasn't ready for that yet. Just imagining Claire's reaction made my stomach turn. She was an expert at twisting words, turning the blame on me, making me doubt myself. But Vanessa's confidence gave me hope. We'll handle this one step at a time, she said. By the end of it, she won't have anywhere to hide. I left her office with a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about protecting myself from Claire's lies and ensuring that when the time came, I'd have the upper hand. That evening, while Claire was in the shower, I grabbed the tablet and started digging. My hands shook as I scrolled through her emails and browser history, half expecting her to burst out of the bathroom at any moment. Most of it was mundane. Online shopping receipts, work-related messages. But then I found a folder labeled Travel Plans. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside were itineraries for the Denver and Phuket trips, both showing matching flights and accommodations with Harper. But one detail stood out. Andrew Miller's name was listed under the guests section for both trips. It was the confirmation I needed. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd planned these getaways with him. I forwarded the files to my own email, careful not to leave any trace, and put the tablet back where I'd found it. When Claire stepped out of the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel, she smiled at me like nothing had happened. Thinking of ordering Thai tonight? She asked, reaching for her phone. My stomach churned at her casual tone, the ease with which she acted like everything was normal. But I played along, forcing a smile. Sounds good, I said. Inside, I was boiling. I had the proof I needed. Now it was just a matter of when and how I'd use it. I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal, though every moment with Claire felt like walking a tightrope. Every laugh she gave, every affectionate touch, felt like poison. How long had she been faking it? How long had I been blind? Vanessa had advised me to keep my cards close to my chest until we had everything we needed. If she gets suspicious, she'll start covering her tracks, she'd warned. So, I waited. I smiled when she smiled, nodded along to her stories, and bided my time. But I couldn't just sit on my hands. I needed to test her, see how far she'd go to maintain the lies. It started casually, over dinner one evening. We were sitting across from each other, plates of pasta between us, when I asked, "Hey, have you talked to Harper lately?" Claire didn't even flinch. "Yeah, we texted this morning," she said, twirling her fork. "Why?" "No reason. Just thinking we should invite her over soon. It's been a while since we've all hung out." She smiled, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Hesitation? "Sure, that'd be nice," she said. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "By the way, I saw that post of hers with the bracelet. The one she said you gave her. That's funny, right? Since you said she gave it to you." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth, and for a split second, her mask slipped. Then she laughed, a little too loudly. "Oh, that's just Harper being Harper. You know how she is, always getting things mixed up." I forced a chuckle, even as my stomach churned. She hadn't even tried to come up with a believable excuse, just brushed it off like it was nothing. The next test came 2 nights later. We were sitting on the couch, watching a movie. Or rather, she was watching the movie, and I was watching her. "Do you ever hear from anyone from that Denver trip?" I asked casually, keeping my tone light. She turned to me with a puzzled look. "No. Why would I?" I shrugged. "Just curious. That restaurant you and Harper went to looked nice." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "It was okay. Nothing special. I let the comment hang in the air, waiting to see if she'd volunteer anything else. She didn't, but her body language was telling a different story. She was stiff, her movements less fluid. She glanced at her phone more than usual that night, as if waiting for something. The final test came the next morning. Claire was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone when I walked in. You know, I said, leaning against the counter, I was thinking about that Phuket trip you took with Harper. That was right around the same time Andrew Miller was there, wasn't it? Her head snapped up, and for a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Who? Andrew Miller, I repeated, pretending to think. The guy from Harper's Post. He was on the yacht with you too, right? Her face went pale. I have no idea what you're talking about. You sure? Because I could have sworn I saw him in one of your photos. She set her mug down with a clatter, her smile strained. Liam, what's with all the questions lately? It's like you're trying to catch me in something. The audacity of her deflection made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm, giving her a sheepish shrug. Just curious. You know me, always overthinking. She relaxed slightly, but the tension in the room was palpable. As I walked away, my heart was pounding. She was lying again. The cracks in her story were getting wider, and she knew it. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not until I was sure I had everything. That night, I sent Vanessa the files I'd found on the tablet, along with notes about Claire's reactions to my questions. Her response was swift. This is solid. We're close. Hang tight. Hang tight. Easier said than done when every moment with Claire felt like a ticking time bomb. It all came to a head one Friday night. Claire was unusually cheerful, humming to herself as she set the table for dinner. I watched her from the couch, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the person who'd been lying to my face for months. Vanessa had called me earlier that day. We've got everything, she'd said. Hotel receipts, flight records, even credit card charges linking Claire to Andrew. It's undeniable. I'd spent the rest of the afternoon pacing the house, my mind racing with how to approach this. Should I ambush her? Be calm? Explosive? Vanessa had advised me to stay composed, to stick to the facts, but the anger boiling inside me was hard to contain. Claire placed a bowl of salad on the table and called out, "Dinner's ready." I stood, walking into the dining room with deliberate steps. She looked up and smiled, but her expression faltered when she saw my face. "Everything okay?" she asked, her tone cautious. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo of Andrew with Claire and Harper in the hotel suite. I set it on the table, sliding it across to her. "What's this?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. Her smile froze. She glanced down at the screen, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it outright. But then her face hardened. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice tight. "Does it matter?" I shot back. "Why don't you explain it to me, Claire? You, Harper, and Andrew. Matching robes, cigars, all smiles. Looks like a hell of a vacation." She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. "This isn't what it looks like." I laughed, a bitter sound that felt foreign even to me. "That's your defense?" "Claire, I've got receipts. Flight records. Hotel bookings. You lied about Denver, about Phuket, about everything. So why don't you try telling me what it really is?" Her eyes darted around the room, searching for something. An escape, an excuse, anything. Finally, she sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "We met Andrew through Harper. He's a friend." "A friend?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Claire, friends don't take matching robe photos in hotel suites. Friends don't lie to their spouses about who they're traveling with." "It wasn't like that," she snapped. "It was harmless. Harper wanted to invite him along, and I didn't see the big deal. We were just relaxing after a stressful trip, that's all." "Relaxing," I said flatly, "with cigars and matching robes. Claire, do you hear yourself right now?" She glared at me, her jaw tight. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Liam. Nothing happened between us. Harper and I were just being friendly." "Friendly," I repeated, my anger flaring. "You think I'm stupid?" You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around, and now you want me to believe this was all innocent." Her eyes narrowed. "You're paranoid. You've always been paranoid. That's the real problem here. Not me, not Andrew, but you and your insecurities." The audacity of her deflection was staggering. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I have proof, Claire. Do you want me to list it out? The photos, the receipts, the emails. You think I wouldn't find out?" Her face paled at the mention of emails, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. "Liam," she said, her tone softening, "please, don't do this. We can work through this." "It didn't mean anything." "It didn't mean anything?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You betrayed me, Claire. You lied to my face. You think you can just brush this under the rug like it's nothing?" She stood now, her hands trembling. "I made a mistake, okay? But it's not what you think. I love you. You're my husband. Andrew, he doesn't mean anything to me." I stared at her, my chest heaving with anger and disbelief. "You don't get to play the victim here, Claire. This is on you. And I'm done being lied to." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. "Save it," I said. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. This marriage is over." Her face crumpled, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw real fear in her eyes. But I couldn't bring myself to care. Not after everything she'd done. I turned and walked out of the room, her voice calling after me. "Liam, wait. Please, don't do this." But I didn't stop. For the first time in months, I felt like I was taking back control. The house was dead silent the next morning. Claire didn't sleep in our bed. Hell, I wasn't sure she even slept at all. I heard her moving around during the night, soft footsteps on the hardwood floors, but I didn't care enough to check what she was doing. When I finally came downstairs, she was sitting at the kitchen table, clutching a mug of coffee like it was a lifeline. Her eyes were puffy, and her hair was a mess. For a second, I felt a pang of pity, but it was fleeting. "You can pack your things today," I said, grabbing a glass of water. Her head snapped up. "What? Liam, come on. Let's just talk this through. Please." "Talk about what?" I asked, turning to face her. "You've had months to tell me the truth. You didn't. Now we're done." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you." "Save it," I interrupted, my voice cold. "You didn't mean to hurt me? You planned entire vacations around this guy. You lied to my face, Claire. Every time you looked me in the eye and said it was just you and Harper, you knew you were screwing me over." "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "Andrew, he doesn't mean anything to me." I laughed bitterly. "Stop saying that. Do you think that makes it better? You lied to me for months, and now you want me to believe he's just some random guy?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she dropped her gaze, staring into her coffee like it held the answers she didn't have. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "You can stay with Harper, or whoever the hell else you want, but you're out of here by tonight. I'm not giving you the chance to worm your way out of this." For a moment, I thought she might argue. Her jaw tightened, and her hands clenched around the mug. But then she nodded, her shoulders sagging. "Fine," she said quietly. "But you'll regret this, Liam. You think you're so righteous, but you're not perfect either." I felt a flicker of anger at her deflection, but I didn't take the bait. "This isn't about me," I said simply. "It's about you and the choices you made." I left her sitting there, retreating to the office to call Vanessa. "Liam," she said when she answered, her tone brisk, "how did it go?" "She admitted to the affair," I said. "Or at least, she stopped denying it." "Good," Vanessa replied. "That's one less thing to worry about. I've already filed the initial paperwork. Now it's just a matter of making sure everything stays on track." "What about the house?" I asked. "I don't want her coming back here once she's gone." "We'll handle that," Vanessa assured me. "Just focus on keeping things civil for now. The less drama, the better." "Easier said than done," I muttered. After hanging up, I spent the rest of the day avoiding Claire. She started packing her things in the afternoon, moving around the house like a ghost. I caught glimpses of her carrying boxes to her car, her face blank. By evening, she was gone. The house was eerily quiet without her presence, but instead of feeling sad or lonely, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel so heavy. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. The betrayal still stung like hell, but at least now, I wasn't living in the dark. Claire was out of my life, and I was ready to figure out what came next. The first week after Claire left was surreal. The house felt emptier, quieter, and not just because she was gone. It was the weight of her lies, the months of betrayal that had seeped into every corner, every memory. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd sit on the couch at night, staring at my phone, half expecting her to text or call, begging for another chance. But she didn't. What I got instead was a phone call from Harper. "Liam," she began, her voice tight. "Can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair, already bracing for a storm. "What's there to talk about, Harper?" "About Claire. About all of this," she said. She told me what happened. "She's devastated." "Good," I said flatly. There was a pause. "Look, I'm not saying what she did was right, but you have to understand." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't make excuses for her. You were in on it, Harper. You lied to me just as much as she did." "That's not true," she snapped. "I didn't know about Andrew at first. She swore to me it was just a fling, something that wouldn't go anywhere." I laughed bitterly. "And that makes it better? You were her accomplice, Harper. You helped her cheat. You think that's forgivable?" "I didn't know how to stop it," she yelled. "She's my sister. What was I supposed to do? Betray her?" "You should have told me the truth," I said coldly. "But you didn't. And now I know exactly where you stand." Harper's voice softened. "Liam, I'm sorry. I really am. If I could take it back, I would." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Part of me wanted to yell, to tell her to never contact me again. But I couldn't muster the energy. "Apology accepted," I said finally. "But don't expect me to forgive you anytime soon." She hung up after that, leaving me with a bitter taste in my mouth. The fallout didn't stop there. Word of the divorce spread quickly through our social circles. People started reaching out, some genuinely supportive, others fishing for gossip. I heard about Claire. One coworker texted me, "What a mess. You doing okay? Let me know if you need anything," an old friend said. Divorces can get nasty. I ignored most of the messages, unwilling to explain myself over and over. But the few I did respond to made me realize how much my world was about to change. Friends we'd shared as a couple were already choosing sides, and I could see the cracks forming in my relationships with people I'd known for years. The worst was running into someone at the grocery store, a mutual friend of Claire's and mine, Stephanie. "Oh, Liam," she said, her face a mask of pity. "I heard about what happened. I just can't believe Claire would do something like that." I shrugged, forcing a neutral expression. "It is what it is." She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "Do you know if she's still seeing that guy, Andrew?" I froze. "Why do you ask?" Stephanie's eyes darted around, as if she'd already said too much. I saw her post something about him on Instagram. I thought maybe they were still, you know." I clenched my jaw, barely managing a nod. "Thanks for letting me know." When I got home, I couldn't resist pulling up Claire's Instagram. I hadn't checked it since she left, but now I needed to know. Sure enough, there it was, a photo she posted just 2 days after moving out. It wasn't of her and Andrew, but it was a shot of a fancy cocktail at a rooftop bar. The caption read, "Starting fresh. Here's to new beginnings." The comments were a mix of supportive friends and clueless acquaintances. But one stood out, a reply from Andrew Miller himself. "Here's to many more," he'd written, followed by a winking emoji. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. That night, I called Vanessa and told her to fast-track the divorce proceedings. "Make it as airtight as possible," I said. "I don't want her getting a single thing she doesn't deserve." Vanessa didn't miss a beat. "Consider it done." I hung up, feeling a strange mix of anger and relief. Claire and Andrew could have their new beginning. I was starting one of my own, and I'd make damn sure it didn't include her lies or manipulation. The first therapy session wasn't easy. I'd never been the type to sit in a room and bare my soul to a stranger, but after everything with Claire, I felt like I was carrying around a weight I couldn't shake. Vanessa had suggested therapy during one of our meetings, and after some prodding, I finally caved. The office was small but cozy, with soft lighting and shelves lined with books I'd never read. Dr. Lauren Bennett greeted me with a warm smile and a firm handshake. She was middle-aged, with a calm presence that immediately made me feel like I could let my guard down, at least a little. "So, Liam," she began, settling into her chair, "what brings you here?" I hesitated, staring at the floor for a moment before meeting her eyes. "My wife cheated on me," I said bluntly. Her expression didn't change. She just nodded, her pen poised over her notepad. "I'm sorry to hear that. How are you feeling about it?" I almost laughed. How was I feeling? I'd spent weeks cycling through anger, sadness, confusion, and numbness, sometimes all in the span of an hour. "I feel betrayed," I said finally. "Angry. Like I wasted years of my life on someone who didn't deserve it." "That's understandable," Dr. Bennett said gently. "Betrayal, especially from someone you trusted, can leave deep scars. But it sounds like you're already taking steps to move forward." I nodded. "The divorce is in motion. She's out of the house. I'm doing everything I can to put her behind me, but it's not easy." "It won't be," she said. "But the fact that you're here, willing to talk about it, shows that you're ready to start healing." The session continued, with Dr. Bennett asking questions about my marriage, my relationship with Claire before the betrayal, and how I'd been coping. It wasn't easy to dredge up those memories, especially the good ones. I told her about the early days, how Claire and I had met at a friend's party, how we'd bonded over our love of hiking and photography. Back then, everything had felt so simple, so effortless. "Do you think there were signs you missed?" she asked at one point. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Looking back, there were moments when things didn't add up. Times when she was distant or evasive. But I trusted her. I never thought she'd do something like this." "That trust is what makes the betrayal so painful," Dr. Bennett said. "But it's also what makes healing possible. Trust is a reflection of your values, not hers. The fact that you gave her that trust shows the kind of person you are." Her words stuck with me long after the session ended. Maybe she was right. Maybe Claire's betrayal said more about her character than mine. In the weeks that followed, I started taking small steps to rebuild my life. Therapy became a regular part of my routine, a place where I could untangle the mess of emotions that Claire had left behind. I also threw myself into work, picking up extra projects and volunteering for tasks I'd normally avoid. It wasn't just a distraction. It was a way to prove to myself that I could still succeed, still move forward, even after everything. Friends started reaching out more, too. Real friends, the ones who'd stuck by me during the fallout. A few even dragged me out to bars and dinners, insisting that I needed to get back out there. I wasn't ready for dating, not yet, but being around people who genuinely cared about me reminded me that Claire's betrayal wasn't the end of my story. One weekend, I decided to tackle the house. It still felt like it carried her shadow, and I wanted to make it my own again. I painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and got rid of anything that reminded me of her. By the time I was done, the house felt different, lighter, freer. That night, I sat on the couch with a beer, staring at the freshly painted walls. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Claire and Andrew could keep their winking emojis and rooftop cocktails. I didn't need them. I didn't need her. I was moving forward, one step at a time. It was a crisp fall evening when the divorce was finalized. Vanessa had called me earlier that day to let me know the papers were signed, the agreements locked in. Claire hadn't contested anything, likely because she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. "She's out of your life, Liam," Vanessa said. "Time to move forward." I thought I'd feel triumphant hearing those words. But the truth was, the victory felt hollow. The end of the marriage wasn't something I'd ever wanted. It was just something I'd been forced to face. That evening, I sat on the back porch with a whiskey in hand, staring at the trees as they swayed gently in the wind. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of leaves and earth. It reminded me of the hiking trips Claire and I used to take, back when things were simple. I thought about the beginning, how she used to look at me like I was her whole world. I thought about the late-night talks, the shared dreams of a future that now felt like someone else's story. And then I thought about the lies, the bracelet, the trips, the way she'd laughed with Andrew, as if none of it mattered. That's what hit me the hardest. Not the cheating itself, but the ease with which she'd done it. The way she pretended to love me while building a life behind my back. But for the first time, I didn't feel the anger I'd carried for months. I didn't feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. What I felt was relief. Claire's choices weren't mine to carry anymore. Her lies, her deceit, they were her burden now, not mine. I finished my drink and went inside, the warmth of the house wrapping around me like a comfort I hadn't realized I needed. The walls were no longer filled with memories of her. They were filled with me. My choices, my life, my future. Over the next few weeks, I focused on building that future. Therapy continued to help, giving me space to process everything I'd been through. Work kept me grounded, and the friends who'd stuck by me reminded me that not everyone in my life was a liar or a manipulator. Even Harper reached out again, this time with an apology I could tell was sincere. She admitted that she'd let Claire drag her into something she wasn't proud of and promised to do better. I didn't forgive her right away, but I appreciated the effort. One day, as I was sorting through old boxes in the attic, I found a photo of Claire and me from our honeymoon. We were standing on a cliffside, the ocean stretching out behind us, her smile radiant. For a moment, I considered keeping it, something to remind me of the good times. But then I shook my head. The good times weren't worth holding onto if they were built on lies. I tossed the photo into the trash, feeling a strange sense of closure as I watched it land. Claire was my past, but she didn't define my future. That evening, I went out with some friends for dinner. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. As I walked home under the streetlights, I thought about what I'd learned through all of this. Trust is a gift, not a guarantee. And when someone abuses that gift, you don't owe them anything. Not forgiveness, not second chances, not your time. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing. It was mine to shape. Claire and Andrew could keep their lies and their new beginnings. I had my own to look forward to, clean, honest, and free of their shadows. And for the first time, I felt ready to face it. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.